So let's talk about Superman Returns. I'm not gonna stay too long on this because honestly, I didn't have much notes to take down, but I'm gonna move quickly, right? So, 2006. Like for many people, this was one of my highly anticipated films of that year, right? And you have to keep in mind that so this came out like right after the Matrix trilogy came to an end, and that was the Matrix trilogy, for better for worse, was Warner Brothers trying to kind of sneak in the Superman, archetype again, but through, cyberpunk Jesus, i.e. Neo. That's what it was, right? But yeah, a lot of stuff and, the Christ-like imagery and stuff like that you especially see in, Reloaded and Revolutions. You could tell, they were drawing from Superman lore and all that kind of stuff, right? Also, fun fact, Smallville season 6 was about to come out. And at the time I was like, but wait, but I thought season 5 was gonna be the end. Like, why the show still going on? Swear to God, that was me. I was like, wait, season 5 gone, that's the end. Like, nope, they keep going like, dog, why? Stop. But anyway.
Wait, season 5 was what? Commencement or something? When you felt the season 5 was commencement? Was it commencement?
I don't remember what the episodes were. I was just talking about when they were released, like when the seasons came out, came out. So yeah, from my wikiing, I found out that season 6 has didn't premiere as yet. The premiere didn't come out as yet, right? So yeah, back then I was watching Smallville like a lot of people, right? And I was waiting to see Tom Welling in his Superman suit, right? So when season 5 finale come, I was like, wait, the man put on the suit that. All right, so I had to wait long, right? But anyway, moving on, right? Don't mind me, I had to wait till the final season ended in 2011 to see what 3 seconds, whatever. Anyway, but another thing what made this show kind of interesting is that this came out a year after Batman Begins, right? Which Ricardo and I did a 20th anniversary retrospective review, right? Yes, CC, I know you hate the film. I know. And I actually went on Letterboxd and I saw that you gave Superman Returns a half of a star. I was like, wow. But that was years ago, but like, wow. You hate this movie that much, right? Anyway, so I got the sense that this was Warner and DC saying, here what? Well, Batman Begins was a huge hit. Let's try Superman this time, right? But here today, right? So I saw it. I saw it on the weekend of, right, when it was released theatrically, right. I think I went with a church group at the time, so I just went to like an evening show, right. I'll never forget this coming out of it like, wow, I really wanted to like the show. But I didn't like the show as much as I wanted to. I didn't hate it. I just came out of it like, wow, I just really wanted to like the show more. For one thing, I felt they tried way too hard to emulate the feel of the Richard Donner films. Like, I was okay with the music, but I just felt like tonally, they really, really tried to, do their own version of the Richard Donner films, right? But then, no, with rewatching this film, right? Admittedly, I have not watched this show, like, since I saw it theatrically. I probably watched it once or twice again. And then, in preparation for this, right? So yeah, this was not a show that I ever bothered to rewatch at all. I just never sought out to see it, right? But on a cool note, this was my introduction to Brandon Routh, right? I'm actually glad that he continued to play, he continued to get, DC money because he played Ray Palmer, aka the Atom. He was in Arrow, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, even Batwoman. As far as Batwoman goes, I only saw the series premiere. And I never cared to watch the rest of that show. Never cared. Even when they switch the actress, I was like, I don't care. I'm sorry, I don't care, right? But anyway,
that show didn't work. Although the guy who they finally got the guy in a Batwing outfit, and that looked great. It's probably one of the best outfits they ever do.
That's Lucius. That's somebody else, right?
Luke Fox. Luke Fox. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, whatever, right? But also what made this interesting was the director, Bryan Singer, because I actually, at the time, was digging the X-Men films. I was digging X1. I really, really loved X2, right? Back then, right? X3, which is funny, right? Because this is the same year that X-Men: The Last Stand came out, right? Yeah, Brett Ratner directed that, right? Because I think Brett Ratner was supposed to do Superman Returns, or he's supposed to do a Superman movie, but then Bryan Singer got called in, so it's like, I read the script for Last Stand. I'm good, right? It's a good thing that Bryan didn't do that. Yeah, Last Stand was kind of terrible, right? And as far as Brett Ratner goes, right? Like, listen, I enjoyed the first 2 Rush Hour movies, but I really didn't care for 3, right? So I'll leave it like that, right? And Last Stand, like I say, was a huge letdown, right? So part of my hype level for this movie was like, hey, Bryan Singer, do the X-Men films. I thought he did a solid job in both of them. All right, let me see what you do with a Superman movie, right? And speaking of Bryan Singer, yeah, Kevin Spacey's in this too, and well, after my retrospect review of Seven, which I did back in 2020, yeah, I just flat out stopped calling him out by name. So in the case of my review, I'm gonna just call him Lex Luthor, right? So watching this film over again, right? Moving quickly, right? Just like the X-Men movies, I like that when you see the Warner Brothers logo and the music, you hear a bit of the superhero theme music worked into the music now. So like with the Fox intro, you hear da 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 da, and then it ends, right? So this one you hear ba 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 during the horn section. It's like, alright, Bryan Singer doing your thing. Okay, it's cool. Also John Ottman, who did the scores for X-Men, does the score here, right? I thought for the most part they work, right? You could tell he's paying tribute to John Williams, right? So when you hear the theme song, yes, it's John do it, and you could tell like it sounds slightly different from what John did, but it's like John Ottman, I like you, I like what you did, like you do, I like your scores, right? He also co-edited this film, so like okay, that's kind of cool, right? But yeah, anyway, in this story we learn that when astronomers discovered the remains of Krypton, Superman disappeared, right? And in the beginning of this film, you find out that he was out of action for 5 years, right? And then interestingly, is that he crash lands onto near the Kent farm, right? In a bigger version of the crystal ball kind of ship that he landed on Earth the first time in the first movie. I was like, oh, okay, that was really cool, right? And then you find out later on, I was reminded of this. Like this show tries to erase Superman 3 and 4, right? So this technically is the follow-up from Superman 2. I was like, all right, well, okay.
Right.
But then when you think about it, it's technically set in 2006, right? But they try to do the 80s pastiche in terms of the set design and all that kind of stuff, right? So a part of me, admittedly, while I was watching, it's like, why did just set this in the early 80s? Like, if you want to erase Superman 3 from existence, why not set it in 83? Like, 5 years from, well, or I used to say 85. So, technically, so you could say, oh, well, if Superman 2 really did take place in 1980, right, then why not just set the story in 85 and keep that 80s aesthetic? No, they just try to do both. I was like, all right, well, okay, whatever. But anyway,
because for some reason in the 2000s, there was this weird taboo against doing period pieces for blockbusters. Like, you can do a superhero movie, but it has to be set in the 2000s for some reason. I don't know why this was the obsession, but like, do you notice that none of the superhero movies of the 2000s are period pieces?
That's actually true. That is actually true. Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, can't. And I had a question, because you're talking about this, and like Bryan Singer makes this movie and how he brings all of his X-Men people. I have a question, since I am kind of the baby of the group here. What exactly was the hype surrounding? I mean, obviously, he's just come off 2 X-Men movies, but can you contextualize for me the hype level around Bryan Singer and kind of what the news of him working on a Superman movie was like?
It's not X-Men. It was really him as the other Kevin Spacey role with him. That's
Usual Suspects. Yeah, which is a bona fide classic. Classic. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That is why he was a hype thing. He was a big deal because of that, not because of the X-Men films. I am pretty underwhelmed with those X-Men films, to be honest. But Usual Suspects is a legit great film, in my humble opinion. It really works. And so when I heard the news that Bryan Singer coming back and Kevin Spacey going to be the two of them working together, I was so hyped for that. I was like, oh yeah, right, great, perfect call. I have my own conspiracy theory involving this film and the trajectory of Brandon Routh's career after, whatever.
Yeah, well. I hope that you could touch on Brandon Routh's post Superman Returns career after this, right? But yeah,
right, I'm not gonna get into that because it's a conspiracy theory.
Okay, right. Yes. So let's move it quickly here, right? So So Clark returns to the Daily Planet. He tries to rekindle the flame he had with Lois Lane, who's played by Kate Bosworth, right? And admittedly, I'm not familiar with her filmography at all. Like, I know Blue Crush was big when it came out, but I was like, Blue Crush? I don't want to see that shit. I don't know. It's funny that she was in that forgettable Straw Dogs remake. Remind me, I'm going to mention Straw Dogs in the next Superman film. I'm going to mention that as an analogy, right? But more on that later, right? So it's funny that Lois went from I spent the night with Superman to the Pulitzer Prize winning article, Why the World Does Not Need Superman. I was like, God damn boy, just that
Right.
that downfall, like woof, right? And speaking of X-Men people, yeah, no surprise, Lois is a baby mama now, and thanks to Cyclops, he cock blocker, shit. Like when I see, oh geez, man, so this, and he played, he played Lois, man. I was like, oh gosh, but again with him always cock blocking the heroes, but like, why does he do this shit? First is Cyclops, first is him and Cyclops coming in between Wolverine and Jean Grey. Now we come in between Lois and Clark. Like, dog, James, why do you do this? Why do you do this, right? Whatever. And she also has a son who you'll get into in a bit, right? But it's funny in retrospect, right, that Lois will reunite with Superman in a similar way to when she first met him, right? Where the plane that she's in is about to crash, right? And that's because Lex now, and I actually genuinely think this is kind of a genius idea. Yeah, Lex actually finds the Fortress of Solitude and takes a whole bunch of the crystals, right? Which, Clark used to communicate with the hologram of his dad now. And yeah, he decides that he wants to make his own fortress, right? So I like that you realize, if you submerge this thing into water, it'll grow its own thing, right? Because that was something about the first film that, you see it, but you don't really talk, you're not really thinking about it too much, where he takes the irradiated kryptonite, throws it at the tundra, and then it forms the fortress, right? So like, he's like, oh, okay, if you just take a crystal, put it in water, it grows, right? Into whatever it is. I actually kind of like that, right? But yeah, thanks to that now, the plane navigational systems mess up now, and the plane's about to crash, and Superman comes to save the day, right? But yeah, visually, the plane crash scene really holds up, right? But forgive me, Tracy, for saying this, right? I really, 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 really did not need to hear Clark say, I hope this experience didn't put any of you off flying. Statistically, it's still the safest way to travel. Ugh.
It's a callback, but it's not.
I know, but
it's a
why,
callback,
boy?
obviously.
Why we doing this? That's what
I'll
the
tell you
problems
what my
do.
thing is,
Like, they do callbacks in this non-nuanced kind of way. What they do is like, oh gosh, I know what you're trying to do. Stop it now. Like, nothing subtle at all. It's just in your face. Like, stop it, show. Stop it now. The scene with I remember one of the big highlights of the movie was, the guy with the real gun. I'm a huge fan of real guns, right? And one of the big highlights in that now was when, Superman, collects a bullet to the eye, right? I will never forget there was a parody movie, right? Because remember, folks, in the late 2000s and early 2010s, parody movies were a thing. So there was a parody movie called Superhero Movie. And there was a moment where a character like Superman gets shot in the eye. He's like, oh my God, my eye! And then he trips, he topples over the roof and falls, right? And that was in the trailer. I never bothered to watch that movie. The only one of those parody movies I saw was Date Movie, but that's a long story. That's another story.
Yeah, they do Friedberg and Seltzer.
And Seltzer, yeah. The only one I suffered through was Date Movie. I remember watching what was my not survival movie. I forget there was one in particular that had Kim Kardashian, or at least someone looking at Kim Kardashian. She just lets out this disaster movie. I watched like the first 3 minutes of that. I get a splitting headache because I was like, nah, change that station one time. That's not for me, right? But anyway, the fracture relationship. What?
So superhero movie. It only had 140 bits in it. Is with Tracy Morgan. You'll know it when you see it.
Okay, okay. That's for later though. I do like the whole fractured relationship thing between Clark and Lois. That's like a good narrative angle, right? Now here's the thing. When I was younger, I was not a fan of the down bad Clark, right? Remember, keep in mind, I was watching Justice League Unlimited at the time, so I did not pay money to see Clark all mopey and going through the bank and like, oh, Lois, right? But still seeing him hovering over Lois's home and doing the X-ray vision. Why are we doing this show? And then him in the Daily Planet and he watching Lois go up the elevator. I'm like, why are we doing this show? Why? But I understand emotionally where Clark is coming from. But to be fair, and Lois called him out for it, you're just left without seeing anything, right? So it is on him, right? Whatever. This moment just makes no sense to me as I move quickly here, right? So, so Lois is obsessed over, the blackout that took place, right? When Lex tested out the whole, solitude, crystal thing, right? And it goes to the point where she goes to the man's yacht, because he's doing the whole, okay, I don't have like an actual like layer, like actual like building. So in this case, I'm in a yacht now, right? That's what I do now, whatever, right? But yeah, you take your son there, you take him out to the car and you go on the yacht looking for Lex to ask him questions. And then when Lex actually discovers you, of course, what do you think is going to happen? Obviously, he's going to kidnap your ass, dumbass. So yes, Lois and her son, Jason, are captured, right? And of course, Richard, as in James Marsden, finds out where she's at, sorry. And of course, Clark finds out too, and, stuff take place, right? What I will say though, one admirable aspect of the movie is I like that Brandon Routh, Kate Bosworth, and Kevin Spacey are not trying to emulate Christopher Reeve or Margot Kidder or Gene Hackman. They're playing the same characters, but they're doing it in their own way, right? I like that, right? And as far as as far as Brandon Routh, he's decent. That's the best thing I say. He's decent as both Clark and Superman. I prefer him more as Superman. He has the look down, in my opinion. When he's Clark, he's really not that interesting to me. And because they don't really give Clark Kent much to do except just be mopey and shit because, Lois gone, you know what I mean? I just didn't really care for Clark in this movie. But as Superman, deal with this whole conflict about, I'm back here. Do people really want me? Am I worthy of redemption, so to speak, right? I kind of like that. That's kind of interesting, right? So as for the third act, right? At the time, I didn't like the scene where Lex and his goons are beating up Superman. But now seeing it in with more mature eyes, I get it. Okay, is he partially Christ? I get it. Is the Christ figure being tortured and blah blah blah. I get it. Okay, I write down the point where he gets stabbed at the side. It's all right, movie. I get it. Okay, and it's Lex who stabs him with a kryptonite shard. It's all right, show. I get it. Christ imagery. I get it. Right? Okay, right? But I will say the moment where Superman lifts the island, I thought that was a brilliant moment to me, right? It stood out to me the first time I saw it, and today it still does, right? Not just because he lifts up an island, right? It's an island at least with kryptonite, and he is pushing this thing up, though. You know what I mean? That was kind of amazing, right? But yes, of course, it wears his powers down, so of course he has to fall, and his arms have to be outstretched, very Christ-like. I was all right, sure, again, I get it, right? In retrospect, I do like how they play on the whole Death of Superman thing, because there's a moment where Perry and Jimmy have backup front pages, so it's Death of Superman or Superman Lives. I like that, right? It's a shame now that Zack Snyder, who you'll get into later, really, really had to take that whole Death of Superman thing so seriously that he made that a major plot point in Batman v Superman, right? But more on that later on, right? So as I wrap things up, right? So as a spiritual sequel to Superman 2, it works for the most part. It's heartfelt, it's sentimental and emotional and whatnot, right? But it just lacked the spectacle of the first two Superman movies. What the problem I felt with this movie did was that it just leaned towards the heart of the Donner films, right? Making us feel all emotionally swept up with Superman and Lois and stuff like that, right? But it forget about the spectacle. So yes, I'm seeing some grand moment, and yes, I mean the VFX looks good, right? But it couldn't match what I saw in those first two Donner films, right? It really didn't, right? And if you really think about it, right, this is meant to be the end of technically the Donner trilogy. If Donner was able to make this is what he was trying to do. It's let's do a what if scenario. What if Donner did this film in this way and we tried? But that's the thing, they tried, but they couldn't even match what Donner did, right? But for me, I saw what he was trying to do here, but it just lacked the spectacle of the first two films, right? So ultimately, it just comes off as dull and bland and just really trying way too hard to emulate the look and feel of the first two Superman movies, right? So for me, it's fine. I don't love it. I don't hate it. Is one of those, if it was in a box set, I'd buy it, but because the box set includes 3 and 4, why would I want 3 and 4 in my collection though? You know what I mean? So I would quicker just own 1 and 2 and just say bond the other 3 movies, right? So for me, this gets a 2.5 out of 5. See it if you want to. It's not the worst Superman movie in the world. I mean, that still goes to Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. But boy, this was just it was a good idea on paper, boy. But they really need to just fine tune the script just a lot, boy. But I will say, Brandon Routh did his best, right? He's not a terrible Superman in my opinion, though. But he was just in a misguided Superman movie. That's all I'll say. So Ricardo, take it away. How wrong am I?
Oh yeah, I don't like this movie at all. This movie came out I went to see it the night of the World Cup final at the time. I wasn't ready for the World Cup. I didn't care for France, so like I don't really care. And my favorite
Wow.
team was my favorite team that got kicked out at that point, so I didn't care. And I went to see this instead,
Wow.
and I was like,
Shots
um,
fired.
what's that?
Shots fired.
Yeah. So I went to see this instead, and yeah, I was like woefully disappointed in this. As you say, Matthew, yeah, it's something that felt like homage, but homage more came across like taxidermy. I just did not like the direction it took by copying Donna the way he did. I thought that was a totally wrong call. And well, trying to make it a sequel from two. I don't know. Just tell your own story. Like it don't work. It don't work. I get what you're doing. I get what you're going for, but it don't work. Another thing, the biggest problem. Lex Luthor, you have the access to the Fortress of Solitude. My brother in Rao. That's what you came up with after all of this. You have the whole access to the Fortress of Solitude AI computer, and you just come up with another real estate scheme. I'm like, nah, boy. That is when it completely lose me. And then the whole Superman having a son thing, kind of fell flat. It's a okay idea, and it was an okay moment with the piano, but yeah, that whole thing just fell flat for me. It was not interesting. It played as this real serious beat, and it was just completely fell flat as a conceit. Like, I'm sure there are people out there who like it, but yeah, not for me. I don't know. Like, it's something that just Brandon Routh kind of got a raw deal with this, because we see him play Superman later, like basically he's a Kingdom Come type Superman he plays. In the Arrowverse.
And one of the crossovers, yep.
Yeah, it was great. It was absolutely great. So the guy, there's nothing was ever wrong with him. I just think it was just like a bunch of like good talent and just bad ideas. Like it's one of those cases of bad ideas with decent enough execution, and but the bad ideas are not so not so terrible or obnoxious or anything like that, but they don't work for me. They just kind of fell flat, and I don't know what I would have done otherwise. But my attitude was that yeah, they should have like bring in Brainiac or do something more interesting with it, or lead into the aspect of Superman not getting back his home for the final time. Like the idea I had was that Jor-El would be a Brainiac or get corrupted to become Brainiac, and now Superman have to delete the last little piece of his home now, especially in the I think in the DVD cut or the cut scenes that they show him flying about in the ruins of Krypton. And they can have to do with that. I'm not sure. Whatever. But as it is, it don't work. And it had me like realizing for the first time, all right, I just think different from all other Superman fans, because like something that, well, we'll get to the next film, that the idea that Superman had to punch someone, was not true, because like what we get in this in terms of the action was solid enough. Right, the plane sequence is a pretty good scene, even though Superman the animated series basically did that already. And then the stuff with him, saving the city with the disaster, with that stuff, that was good too. Like it was fine. Like I didn't have a big problem with any of this. We get some good okay scenes. I think Parker Posey was in this as Tess Marker. She was okay, I think. Or I can't remember what she...
Tess Marker.
Yeah. Well, she played Kitty. Yeah.
Kitty, right,
yeah.
right. Okay. Right. She was good in this. I thought it's like, oh, they got a good person for this.
And speaking of Parker, I kind of see this because her in a superhero movie again as her paying for the mistake she made in being in Blade Trinity and collected that very, very scathing insult from Ryan Reynolds. If you know, you know. I was like, okay, this is she's second chance at redemption, kind of, yeah.
Right. But yeah, so I liked it in this for the most part, like, and then the stuff they do a couple of okay homages that I don't mind, like him with the green car and stuff like that, right? And I don't know, like it's Road to Hell paved with good intentions kind of stuff. Like that's how it felt like to me. The heart is in the right place, right? But I don't know, it just didn't come together particularly well for me. And yeah, I don't think it works particularly well. Sadly, we get the film that I would have wanted if it came out in 2006. But I don't know if I was too old, or to say I get too mature I get too mature for the edginess. Well, I say I too grow up. I grew up to not like being too mature now. If you get the reference with the next film, but if we got the other film earlier, I would have loved that film if I was younger, right? But this just didn't work for me, and I look back at it recently, it still don't work. Like, and it's a bunch of bad calls. Anyway, rating, not sure. Like, I don't give it that bad of a rating, but like for me, I'll still give it like a low 7 out of 10 because it still does a lot of things right. Had some decent ideas. Superman being kind of introspective. That aspect of it kind of interesting, maybe. But it doesn't come together as well as I felt it could.
All right, so Alicia, tell us, or I should say, tell Ricardo how wrong he is as far as not enjoying Superman Returns.
Well, I have to say, okay, he has some. It has a lot of flaws. Superman Returns. It's not to say I didn't enjoy the film. It's not a film that I totally hate, but there's a lot in the film that does not work. So I could kind of understand why he feels that way. Um, Brandon Routh, in terms of Superman, he really, really tried his best, really, really and truly. Um, One of the biggest downfalls of the film, I would say, is the actress that they chose for Lois. Remember, the embodiment of Superman as well is his love for Lois. And if you get an actress where there is no chemistry, like there's zero chemistry, -1 chemistry, it's not going to work.
Yeah, you're right.
And and I'm sorry, but Kate Bosworth she would get the award for me for the worst ever on screen Lois Lane.
I would be surprised if there's like a list somewhere, like actresses who played Lois Lane, from worst to best, and she's probably at the bottom of the list. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she would be the bottom of the barrel. I'm sorry, because first of all, Kate Bosworth as an actress is not really that enlightening for me. She's not like a wow. Another film that I don't like her and that I can't stand her in, and every time it shows up on cable, I just flip past is Straw Dogs. I can't stand her in that.
Look, listen. As somebody who loves the original, I saw the remake. I was like, why you did this for? This is terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was so bland in that movie. Yeah? Oh my god. Yeah.
She had the personality of a wet blanket.
Yes.
It
yes.
was horrible. It was horrible, and because that film itself, the original film, is very controversial because of that scene. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. And to extend the climax of the film, I'll talk about the climax later on. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, and she, like I said, she has no personality. I don't know what it is. I've seen her in other things too, and Kate Bosworth does not do it for me. And to choose her as Lois Lane, and then she has no chemistry. I'm telling you, -1 chemistry with Brandon Routh. That puts a big damper on the film, and it kind of takes away from some of Brandon Routh's thunder because he didn't do too bad, but the script had a lot of flaws in it. And what I say he did wrong as well too is I think he tried a little less to be his own version of Superman and tried to be too close to Christopher Reeve's version, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah. I felt that he was at least he tried to not be like Christopher Reeve, but okay, you think that he was trying a little too hard to be like him. All right, okay, fair enough.
I think so. I got that impression, but there are some iconic scenes that they try to replicate, and they fell flat again because of the actress. Remember, Superman Returns is supposed to take place after parts 1 and 2 Christopher Reeve version, right? Because it continues from there. But the thing about it is, okay, so they made Lois have a child and so on, and it's very easy to figure out in the beginning who the child's father is, number one. Unless you're living under a rock somewhere or something like that, and you know that, okay, when Superman came to Earth, when Kal-El came to Earth, he had to adjust to the atmosphere, right? So he couldn't breathe. And there are a lot of versions of Martha Kent saying that she would hear him struggling to breathe while he tried to adjust to Earth's atmosphere and so on, right? The big telltale sign of that is the child has asthma. The child has all kind of health problems inexplicably.
Yep.
And so it was kind of easy to figure it out. And even for goodness sake, Lex Luthor, told Kevin Spacey's Lex Luthor figures it out at one point as well too.
Yes, yeah.
Well, it's like, who is this child's father?
Yeah, who is this child's father? Yes.
Yeah, that iconic scene, you know. But one of the favorite scenes I would have to say in the film is when the child protects the mother.
Yes, with the piano. Yeah.
Yeah,
That is a fan favorite moment. I will
yes,
give it that. Yeah.
that was a jaw drop scene for me. Like, holy crap! Because I remember, actually, this is one of the first Superman that I have actually got to go to cinema to see, right? And I actually went with another fellow reviewer that you sometimes invite on the podcast, Movie Junkies, and the both of us sat there like totally stunned,
Okay, I
mouth
just
open.
love the fact that all they have such a long history, you know, because I would meet
Yeah,
her till like in the 2010s though. That's kind of amazing. But yeah, go on.
yeah, yeah. And we were excited because we went with our Superman t-shirts, big Superman t-shirt, the emblem and so on, and excited to see it, and we got excited when we heard the original score, John Williams' score, and the way that the letters, the words come on the screen and so on. They tried very hard to, Bryan Singer, I would say, tried very hard to replicate the success and the nostalgia of Christopher Reeve's Superman, you know? And I think that is where the film started to fall because they tried too hard to not stand on their own, to not try to be something on their own. Even though it was supposed to be a continuation of the incidents that happened then, the fight with Zod and all that stuff. It still didn't have that fluidity that we wanted, you know? And the cheesy moments of where they try to replicate certain scenes, it was a bit too cheesy. AKA the incident with her first uh, her first rescue since his return, where she doesn't know that he has returned and he saves her, and he drops the plane in the middle of the baseball field, right? And he says that iconic line, which Christopher Reeves' Superman tells Lois when he rescues her for the first time from the helicopter. It's like, strictly speaking, airplanes are still the safest way to fly. I'm like, really?
Still,
Yeah,
still,
they had
still
to put that
cringe.
line that
Still
one again.
cringe. Still cringe. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a cringy moment, I had to admit. And then what happens after Superman flies away and leaves the Margot kid or Lois Lane there? She faints, right?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point, okay, I could understand you haven't seen him for a few years, and perhaps he shows up and rescues you. But then they have, okay, she faints again, and then slides down the ramp. And I'm like, oh
Yeah,
Lord.
because it's supposed to look funny, haha, but it doesn't. It doesn't.
No, it's cringe, like you said. That's the perfect word for it, cringe. All those things, what kind of puts a damper, it kills the magic of the film, right? But there are a lot of other scenes that helps it along. For instance, okay, that scene where he has the entire kryptonite island mass on his back, and he's going up in the sky with it, and the kryptonite, you can see that it's the island is still growing and shaping and forming, and he's in danger of getting stabbed with these large um pieces of kryptonite, and he's using like the last bit of energy that he has to move this gigantic landmass. The like that scene is very iconic, and you're like, wow, what he wouldn't do to save these people from destruction. And another thing I wanted to mention too was, you remember I told you I did not like the character of Mr. Smarker from Christopher Reeves' Superman, right? I can't for the life of me remember that actress's name, but I know the person that plays Lex Luthor's girlfriend in this one, Kitty Parker Posey. You won't believe I prefer her version as Lex Luthor's girlfriend, because I feel that the character is a bit more fleshed out than Miss Tess Marker in the other Superman's movies. Because you can see that, okay, the Miss Tess Marker character, she has an attack of conscience just because, okay, one of the missiles, as you know, it was two missiles in Superman 1, and one of them was going to destroy the town that her
New
mother.
Jersey, I think it was. Yeah, New Jersey. Yeah.
Yes, right. It was going to destroy the town that her mother was in. Okay, and then Superman is drowning because he has a big kryptonite chunk around his neck, right? And before she removes it, she's blackmailing him and saying, "Okay, well, I know you always tell the truth, and you have to promise to save my mother first." And he's like, "But Lois and Jimmy, because remember the missile was going in the opposite direction for Lois and Jimmy," and she kind of blackmails him into promising to save her mother first before she removes the kryptonite from his neck. And yet still before she does it, she takes that opportunity to romantically kiss him. That scene, I'm sorry, Matthew, but that scene pisses me off. And I thought it was like
Okay,
unnecessary.
it's test marker, right? That's what it is. That's how I see it.
Yeah, but even though Kitty's version kind of does something a little similar, I could kind of tolerate a little better. Because remember, he rescues her because the brakes have been cut in the car, right? And she was supposed to pretend that the brakes was on, but Lex Luthor is a psychopath, so he actually cut the brakes on the car. So she's actually is struggling for her life, struggling with this car. And when Superman rescues her, she's like, oh, she has heart palpitations. And she basically kind of climbs on top of him and asks to be taken to the hospital because she has a heart murmur or whatever, right? And you can see that she has a crush on him, obviously, big muscle bound guy saves you. But you can see whenever the camera pans to her face, in terms of when Lex is trying to execute his insane plan, from where he just wants to demonstrate the power of the Kryptonian crystals, and it kind of blocks out the entire city for a little while, remember? And you can see that she's standing up in the back holding the little dog, and she's horrified. She has this terrified look on her face all through the time when she sees him getting involved in building the missile with the kryptonite and so on. You can see that she's having an attack of conscience, you know. And the icing on the cake was when they were on the kryptonite island, and she sees Superman basically getting beaten and kicked around, and then he gets stabbed. She was like, she kind of had enough. And when he gave her the crystals to put on her lap, she's struggling and she's crying in the helicopter just before they escape. And what does she do? She opens the door and dumps the rest of the crystals, even though she knows that Lex Luthor is gonna be pissed at her. For me, that is what kind of redeems that character, and that's why I kind of prefer that character as a representation of Lex Luthor's girlfriend, having a sudden attack of conscience and wanting to do the right thing. That was just a little rant that I had about that. I was kind of telling my husband about that the other day, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I can see that." But yeah, all of those points is what kind of redeems the film. But I just found that the weak part in the film were those corny moments where they try to replicate humor. The little humorous parts that they had in part one and two of the Christopher Reeves, like I told you, it tried to be too much and play too much on the nostalgia of fans without trying to be its standalone film. And unfortunately, because of this, Brandon Routh wasn't chosen to be another Superman on another film. I think they were kind of blaming him as well too, which I don't think was very nice. But what I did like is that Brandon Routh actually gets to return as Superman in the CW universe, the DC universe. I
Yes.
really like that. Yeah, I really like that he got another chance, and you can see that the character was ecstatic to play Superman again. So with that, Superman returns to me 2.5 out of 5.
Right. Tracy, tell us how wrong we are with Super Mario Returns.
Here's my thing. I have the DVD, like the actual DVD, in a box with behind the scenes and all kind of stuff. I haven't watched it in a while because I threw out my DVD player.
Huh.
But that is kind of where I sit. There's a story in one of the documentaries. I don't know if it falls under legend or whatever, but there's a story that some of the ideas that Bryan Singer was bringing or brought to the screen. Whenever the people at the top decided to push back against it, he would take the picture of Tim Burton's suit that Nicolas Cage was in, and says, "Is this what you want?" And they would sort of fold. So, in that light, if that is true or legend, as it probably might be, it kind of just be like, oh, okay, so you just went blah in terms of how you decided that you wanted it to be versus what it could have been. It's a lot of copy and paste, but there are moments, because I remember, I think Mom and I saw that in cinemas. I really do believe that. But anyhow,
Yeah, I thought
there's a lot of there is a lot of cut and paste in it, but it's like, okay, I could understand, I can get behind it to a degree. I will tell you the things that for me worked really well was the introduction of Jason and like the idea of is he or isn't he? Like, yes, the piano scene, the piano scene still gets cheers for me because I liked that piano scene. But like when they're in the plane and there's a flood and Jason says he's down there, but you can't tell if it's Jason seeing him or if it is Richard, the fiance, who is like finally being able to see him from the pilot perspective. Like they play to that. And there's some things in that relationship that I felt could have been beefed up a little bit more. That would have been brilliant. I did not like when he was being beaten up. I could understand being beaten up, but there's a part where they're holding him by the cape and like dragging him, and you're hearing him screaming, "I'm Superman!" Like these are little things that for some reason it's like nails on a chalkboard for me whenever I hear it, and I don't necessarily need that. I've reached a point where unless you do something really, really horrifying, I'm not going to. I don't feel overly judgmental for the past films. Like in terms of Superman, like Superman landing a plane in the middle of a baseball field is like Superman landing a plane in the middle of a baseball field, and that still gives me a measure of emotion. But all in all, this might get like a 3 or something like that from me. There are moments that were still pretty cool, and I did like when they cast him as Ray Palmer. His whole arc in as Ray Palmer in the Arrowverse was just brilliant. There's a line after the first crossover where Felicity looks at him and he says to her, she kind of, this is after they met Supergirl, and he says, she kind of reminds me of my cousin, and just like leave that open to the possibility. And then years later, they put him in the Kingdom Come suit and make him that whole version of Superman. I was like, yes, justice. But I don't. It's one of those things. It's like I like it. I would watch it, but it's not something that I would go back and be like, here's an in-depth feeling as to how I feel about Superman Returns. And I still have the DVD in the drawer, with all the other stuff that I have there. So yeah, that's where I live.
And lastly,
Gotcha.
To the one who gave it a half of a star on
I stand by that.
Yeah, on Letterboxd. Yeah, CC. Why do you hate Superman Returns so much?
Okay. I'm going to start first of all, I will say Brandon Routh is good. I think that Brandon Routh did the absolute best that he could given the material he was presented with. He was presented with utter dog shit, but he took that dog shit and god damn it did he do his best. Which is more than I can say for most of the cast in this movie. I don't know what movie Kevin Spacey is in, but at least Brandon Routh is trying. I'm also going to give a shout out to I'm going to point out to the listeners at home that the good Sir Tracy has gone on record defending Cruella.
Hey.
You haven't let that go, man. It was 2021. It's 2021, right? It was 2021.
And could not defend Superman Return.
Hey.
Wow.
Cruella is a masterpiece. It is brilliant. It is stitched together and glorious. I still have very good feelings about Cruella to this day. Oh my god.
So I'll let that sit. I am going to present a pretty succinct 3-tier argument why Superman Returns is not only a complete failure of a movie and a complete failure of the Superman character, but is actually one of the worst blockbusters to come out of Hollywood in its entire history. Point number one, there's a difference between homage and pastiche. What Bryan Singer is doing in this movie is not homaging Bryan Singer. He is pastiching. No, sorry, but he's not homaging Richard Donner. He is pastiching Richard Donner. He is borrowing so heavily from Richard Donner's aesthetics and from his misunderstanding of Richard Donner's sense of drama, because at my most cynical, it feels as if he is simply trying to skip the step where he has to earn our respect with his Superman movie. Because Bryan Singer knows that we know the last Superman movie to be in theaters was Quest for Peace. A bad movie, to be sure, but still a movie that was able to ride some of the goodwill and some of the coattails of the original Richard Donner film. That as time has gone on and there have been no more Superman movies, has kind of been able to exist. Like, essentially, because there haven't been any Superman movies to compare it to in the 90s, the only thing we will compare this movie to is the Donner film. So he does a little, okay, I'm not going to bother trying to create my own distinct, interesting Superman movie. I'm going to skip that and deliberately evoke the Donner film as a way to draw more favorable comparisons. And I have great respect for the human race that we saw right through that shit and did not and just didn't buy into it whatsoever. Like, if anything,
it's a total cargo cult.
It's absolutely no. We saw through it so succinctly. And no one fell for it. And if anything, trying to ride Richard Donner's coattails that thoroughly shot him in the ass.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. It's one of the same reasons why I'm not a fan of like J.J. Abrams, right? It's this playing with this kind of pass. And I don't know, something about it. There's this generation of filmmaker that just fall for that crap. Like, they thought, the world not going to change, or not going to change fast enough for us to pick it up. And so they think they're smarter than the audience, and they're not. Another thing is that, as I say, the big problem is that, to be fair, you could tell that he would probably wanted to also avoid the trappings of being too different. Because remember, this is coming off of the legs of the quote-unquote the Nicolas Cage Superman. I forget the name of that project.
Superman Reborn
Flyby?
or something.
It wasn't Superman Lives, right? Was it?
Superman Lives. No, but
there was also Superman Flyby, which was the one that J.J. Abrams was going to make.
Right.
It was going to be starring Ashton Kutcher.
Right. So that's why I get a feeling that you could tell that he was building on something like that. Because it's not, I can find it too pastiche now. And I would suspect that if Flyby came out, if Flyby existed, it would have been really similar to this. Like, it's the same homage to other earlier filmmaking kind of bullshit, no? Like, that nonsense, no? It's like, so, and that's why I feel like this, that you take that kind of lazy, like, I don't know what to say lazy route, but like, look, there's the nature of the business. It is lazy,
I will say.
Yeah. There's the nature of the business.
And here's the thing.
Depends on the franchise, right?
And the thing that I find especially insulting is that about specifically that whole pastiche aspect of it is that Bryan Singer's coming like, I'm making this film in the same stylistic, like the same. It's like, this is essentially just a continuation of the Richard Donner. I'm making this like a Richard Donner movie, and I'm like, motherfucker, Richard Donner is still alive. He's right there. Richard Donner is right there, still making movies. And I can't remember what he was working on at that point, but like the man is still. And Bryan Singer is homaging him like he's a dead man. It's shameless. So that's my first point. My second point, I would like to let my co-hosts and the audience know that this is, per minute count, not including extended cuts, the longest Superman film that has been made thus far, clocking in at 153 minutes. It is longer than any of the Donner films. It is longer than the Lester film or Quest for Peace or Man of Steel. I think it starts to kind of push on like maybe Batman versus Superman and certainly some of the other Snyder nonsense. But this is the thing is, what does Bryan Singer do with that runtime? What does Bryan Singer do with the runtime of almost like 2.5, starting to push 3 hours? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
This is the most boring movie. One of the most boring movies I have ever seen. Nothing happens in this film.
Again,
This
I
film
try to be
Oh!
charitable. Well, I try to be charitable towards this film, but yeah, he want to like do all this introspective stuff about Superman and
Right.
this, that,
He
and
tried to-
it's like none of it working. Sorry, I don't think any of it
No.
works.
You
I
know
get
what
what
it
you're going
reminds me
for,
of?
but it don't
No,
work.
talking about comics, you know what it reminds me of as a film that's trying to be a meditation on Superman but doesn't quite get it? Superman Grounded. J. Michael Straczynski's Superman comic, where like it's trying to be a meditation on Superman that is more stripped back and more slow and whatever. But in both cases, they are struggling because at the end of the day, Bryan Singer still has to make a blockbuster.
Yeah.
And you could make a meditative art house film version of Superman. You'll probably have to wait until Superman's in the public domain to do it, but you could make that Superman movie if you wanted. But at the end of the day, you are a blockbuster. You have all this Warner Brothers money to make a Superman movie. And rather than deliver that, Bryan Singer presents a movie that is made of empty air. There are just so many scenes in this film where I swear to God, every plot beat takes twice as long to happen as it should. I am amazed that there are deleted scenes for this movie because it feels like a movie where nothing was cut, nothing was trimmed, nothing was consolidated, it's just, there's so much of this movie that feels, and again, building to what? It is 2000 and whatever, and Lex Luthor's big plan is a real estate scam.
Yeah, another one.
Where he's going to use kryptonite to create a new continent that Superman can't live on. It is so... I could feel, every time I think about this movie, I just feel this weird deflation. Like, it is a testament to both superhero movies and Superman that this was my introduction to both. And I still pressed on and continued with this genre. Like, this was my first... Yeah, I had never seen a Superman movie before I saw this for the first time. And it is amazing that I ever gave the character another chance after this. I think it was... Yeah, it's a whole thing. But, so yeah, second point. This is a movie about nothing. This is a movie about nothing. Like, this movie attempts to have drama. Also, Ricardo made an excellent point earlier, and I want to draw our attention back to. We talked about the way Lois Lane is written in the Donner films, where she is written as a cynic, but a reasonable cynic. She is written as someone who is skeptical. I would actually say skeptical of Superman, but someone who is like open to trying to figure out what this man is like, what he wants, and all this other stuff. But like, and like how he functions, what his goals and dreams are, whatever. But like, she will still give him the time of day. The way Lois Lane is written in Superman Returns is lacking in that balance that Ricardo was talking about earlier. There is no balance. Lois Lane has become so skeptical and so cynical that she actually comes across, and I hate that the narrative confirms this is true, she comes across as a bitter ex-girlfriend. It is probably, and I'm including the Snyderverse here, the worst written Lois Lane that Superman has ever had to deal with. Because gone is the independent, like even Superman and the Mole Men understood her as like a hard-hitting journalist who like fights back and shit, right? Superman Returns completely misses the mark on her, like absolutely, like Superman Returns just absolutely misses the mark and writes her as this bitter ex-girlfriend who's seemingly motivated by spite, and it's some of the worst Lois Lane writing. And given that she drives so much of the like her relationship with Superman drives it feels like Bryan Singer is trying to do what Sam Raimi did with his Spider-Man movies.
Right.
Where, it's a superhero story, but it's also a melodrama. Except he doesn't understand that melodrama is heightened. You have to have heightened drama for melodrama to work. He's still trying to do his like lazy realism bullshit that he brings to the X-Men films, especially that boring ass first one. The second X-Men is a good movie in spite of itself. It is a good movie. The first X-Men is boring in much the same way that Superman is boring. The Superman Returns is boring. And like Bryan Singer brings all the same tricks, all the same problems of that film to Superman, but worse. And then finally, onto my third point. And this is probably the most personal of the three and probably the least defensible. This is probably the creepiest Superman movie of any of the bunch. Like,
that's true.
My boy.
That's true. That's true.
My boy is a stalker now.
Yeah, they make him a little bit.
Like, let monsoon rains in India wash away innocence. Let volcanoes murder people. No. I'm gonna hover by Lois Lane's house and eavesdrop on her conversation with her husband.
Go away then. Yep.
I'm sure there's a train I could be stopping from smashing into people. I'm sure there's an orphanage somewhere that's on fire. Nah, I'm gonna mope at Lois Lane's window the whole movie. Like I'm gonna mope and be sad and it's so he's such a stalker for so much like
even though this wasn't fair too because she didn't tell him the deadbeat dad stuff, right? That really helped him, even though he's not a deadbeat dad because she didn't tell him, but still it was I don't know, the whole Superman something don't work at all.
Also, and on top of that, Kevin Smith had one of the most devastating critiques of this movie I have ever heard. He actually summed up a lot of this film's problems in one very succinct question. So, this movie, as has been pointed out, takes place directly after the events of Superman 1 and 2. Let us take a moment to remember that at the end of spoiler alert, at the end of Superman 2, Superman because Superman at some point during Superman 2 gives Lois Lane tells Lois Lane that he is Clark Kent, and she knows now. And they even get to know each other biblically at one point in the film. But at the end of the film, because this is actually the weakest thing of the entire Richard Donner, Mario Puzo Superman movies for me. At the end of the movie, her knowing about Superman and Clark Kent is too much. And so he decides to spare her the information by giving her an amnesia kiss that specifically makes her forget that he ever told her he was Superman. I noticed that this is not in the Donner cut of the movie, but whatever. So Bryan Singer's movie follows directly after the events of this. So, as we know, Lois Lane does not remember Clark Kent as Superman and does not remember that they had sex. So, as Kevin Smith points out, what does she then think when she realizes that her kid is Superman's?
Right, so that was confusing to me because I thought it was kind of effectively the Donner cut interpretation, as in she knows he's Superman, but then she doesn't do that when he comes back as Clark.
No, when he comes back, she doesn't know.
So I didn't get the sense that I always got the sense that she knew, or they had another moment after. That was confusing. Yeah, it was a little bit confusing.
It's so weird, and it doesn't make any. And it's both. It's Bryan Singer wants to have his cake and eat it too. He wants to do the boring thing of not have Lois Lane know that Clark Kent and Superman are the same person. For the record, for anyone listening, I think that the best runs and stories about Superman and Lois Lane, not only does she know he is Superman, and not only do they have a whole relationship, but it is central to I think that that's some of the best writing for the characters, especially when they have kids. I think that writers who write them as infertile are cowards. But I think that Superman and Lois Lane being in a committed relationship are generally some of the best Superman stories that we have had. So Bryan Singer, however, not being a very interesting artist, wants to kind of do the thing where she doesn't know he's Superman, but then she later in the movie discovers that her kid is actually Superman's. But again, if we are going off her following the Superman Donner films directly, she does not remember having sex with Superman.
Yeah, as I said, it's still confusing to me because
Right.
I always felt that look, don't do a direct sequel, just do a spiritual sequel, right?
Please
So
do it. Like, right,
yeah.
like.
But that's one of the big problems. Get all these little weird little things about it. Like, and I didn't find out the details. I'm sure somebody have an answer and somebody answered somewhere. But like, it's like, yeah, like why do this and then do the memory erase and kiss thing and then bring back that? However,
right,
you're correct. Yeah.
So in summary, I do not care for Superman Returns. It is a movie that it claims to be an homage of the Richard Donner films while instead being a pastiche of them. It is a movie that is the longest of any of the Superman. It is a bloated, boring movie that seems to actually struggle to imagine interesting and creative set pieces with Superman, which is probably one of the greatest failures of imagination of any blockbuster I've ever seen. And on top of that, between Lois Lane realizing she's had a kid with Superman and not remembering having sex with Superman, and the fact that Superman spends most of this movie creepily watching her in her house with her husband and child that he may or may not know is his. This is the creepiest Superman movie. So yes, I do not care for that. And to be clear, on this very podcast, my hatred for Zack Snyder is on record. But I will give Man of Steel this. It is better than Superman Returns.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.